it hit me like a ton of bricks. The photo on my phone screen mocked me, a cruel parody of the life I thought I knew. It was as if the ground beneath me had shifted, leaving me in a free fall of confusion and pain. It was Mark, my Mark, with a woman I didn't recognize. Their hands intertwined, fingers laced together in a way that spoke of intimacy and trust. Her head rested on his shoulder. They were laughing. My stomach churned. This couldn't be real. It felt like a scene from a nightmare, one I couldn't wake up from. Mark and I had been together for 6 years. 6 years of building a life, of creating memories that I thought were ours alone. 6 years of laughter, love, and shared dreams. Dreams that now felt shattered like fragile glass broken into a million pieces. We were a team, two halves of a whole, or so I thought. We faced challenges together, supported each other through thick and thin. Now, staring at this picture, a horrifying truth began to dawn on me. The life I knew was a lie, a carefully constructed facade. My Mark, the man I loved, was living a double life. A life filled with secrets and deception. How could I have been so blind? The question gnawed at me, tearing at my sense of self. The thought echoed in my mind, a relentless tormentor. It was a cruel reminder of my own naivety. How could I have missed the signs, the subtle hints, the small inconsistencies that I had brushed aside? The late nights at work, the hushed phone calls, the vague excuses. Each one now stood out in stark relief, pieces of a puzzle I had failed to see. It all made sense now, but the realization was a bitter pill to swallow. The truth was harsh, and it left me reeling, struggling to find my footing in a world that suddenly felt so unfamiliar. We met at a friend's party, a cliché I know, but even clichés hold a grain of truth. He was charming, funny, and attentive. I was smitten. Our relationship blossomed quickly, fueled by shared interests and a deep connection. We moved in together after a year, adopted a rescue dog, Charlie, and started planning our future. Mark proposed on a beach at sunset, a picture-perfect moment I'd replayed in my mind 1,000 times. He got down on one knee, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, and asked me to be his wife. Tears welled up in my eyes as I whispered, yes. Life with Mark was comfortable, easy. We rarely argued, always presenting a united front to the world. Our friends envied our relationship, calling us the perfect couple, but perfection, I was learning, was a carefully constructed illusion. The first crack in our perfect facade appeared subtly. It started with a missed call. A woman's voice, unfamiliar and hesitant, left a message on our answering machine. I brushed it off as a wrong number, but a seed of doubt had been planted. Then came the late nights at work. Mark, a graphic designer, was suddenly swamped with deadlines. He'd come home late, smelling of someone else's perfume, his excuses sounding increasingly hollow. When I questioned him, he'd get defensive, accusing me of being paranoid. Then came the lies. Little white lies at first about where he'd been, who he'd been with. But soon, the lies grew bolder, more frequent. My gut screamed at me that something was wrong, but I pushed the doubts aside. I loved him, I trusted him, didn't I? It all came crashing down one rainy Tuesday evening. Mark was late, again. The rain poured relentlessly, mirroring the turmoil inside me. He'd called to say he was working late, but something in his voice sounded off. It was a tone I hadn't heard before, a mix of guilt and hesitation. A knot of anxiety tightened in my chest. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more troubling than the last. Driven by a force I couldn't explain, I grabbed my phone and checked his location. My heart pounded as the screen loaded. The map showed him at a restaurant downtown, a place we'd never been together. It was an unfamiliar name, a place that held no memories for us. Curiosity, or perhaps morbid fascination, compelled me to drive there. The streets were slick with rain, and my grip on the steering wheel tightened with every passing second. And that's when I saw them, Mark and her. They were seated by the window, oblivious to the world outside. Sitting at a table for two, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of candlelight. They looked so comfortable, so intimate. The picture on my phone, the one that had shattered my world, was taken that night. It was undeniable proof of his betrayal. My legs felt like lead, my body rooted to the spot. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, to confront them, but all I could do was watch as they laughed and talked, their connection undeniable. It was as if I was invisible, a ghost witnessing my own heartbreak. It was like watching a stranger, a monster wearing my Mark's skin. The man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by this deceitful imposter. The confrontation was inevitable, explosive, and heartbreaking. It was the culmination of months of tension and unspoken words. The look on Mark's face when he saw me, a mixture of guilt and panic, confirmed everything. It was as if the truth had been written all over his face and there was no escaping it. He tried to explain, to justify his actions, but his words were empty, meaningless. The damage was done, and no amount of apologies could undo the hurt. The aftermath was a blur of tears, anger, and agonizing self-reflection. I found myself questioning everything, every moment we had shared. How could I have been so wrong about him, about us? The betrayal cut deep, leaving me feeling lost and broken. The pain was all-consuming, a gaping wound in my chest that refused to heal. It felt like my world had crumbled around me. Leaving Mark was the hardest thing I'd ever done. It felt like tearing a part of myself away, but I knew it was necessary. But as I walked away from our life together, a strange sense of liberation washed over me. It was as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally in control of my own destiny. I was ready to face whatever came next. The experience had shattered my heart, but it had also taught me the invaluable lesson of self-worth. I realized that I deserved better, that I deserved to be happy. I had loved and lost, but I would rise again, stronger and wiser than before. I was determined to rebuild my life, piece by piece, and this time, I would trust my instincts, my gut feeling, because sometimes the most painful truths are the ones we've been ignoring all along. I would no longer ignore the signs.